All right, I think we can go ahead and get started here. Good morning to all of our students that are joining us here in Columbus. Good evening to our wonderful colleagues and alumni who are joining us here from across India. I'd like to welcome everyone to our first Buckeye Bridge Career Conversations program. This session today is our first where we'll be speaking with some of our wonderful engineering alumni who are joining us here from India. Next week, we'll be having a same session with our alumni in Brazil. And the week after, we'll be having this session with our alumni from India. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my two colleagues, Vinod and Nikhil, who join us from the India Gateways office. And I'd like for them just to share a little bit about themselves and the India Gateways office.
Lovely. Maybe I can go in quickly, Aaron, and everyone. This is Nikhil Tambe. Thanks for investing some time with us. I know the panel's going to be a great resource in a very short while. But just so everyone knows, we are part of a team called India Gateway. It is a unit of the Office of International Affairs. We are based in Mumbai, in India, and we really have, for the last 8 years or so, holding a charter of promoting, branding the university in India, but also being a lot more accessible to all our students, parents, to our alumni, and our industry and academia partners in India. So we've, like I said, been here for 8 years. So China, Shanghai was the first one to start. Now we also have a gateway location at Brazil. So the three offices together, we've been trying to engage with different partners in this part of the world. So absolutely delighted to be in this conversation. Me and Vinod are part of a 6-member team. I will allow Vinod to quickly talk about himself. I look forward more to hear from the panelists, and of course, go forward with your questions. We would love to see, what are your interests in this part of the world. Thank you. Thanks, Aaron.
Thanks, Nikhil. Yeah, hi all. This is Vinod Rani, and I am the alumni relations specialist at the India Gateway office in Mumbai. And thanks, Aaron and Leslie, for organizing this wonderful session. I believe this session will be helpful to students, very informative, and yeah, looking forward to the session. And I'd like to thank all our alumni in India for joining this and also being able to participate. Thanks. Over to you, Aaron.
Thank you, Vinod. So as Nikhil mentioned, there is a Q&A function on Zoom. So I'm going to, here in a moment, have all of our panelists introduce themselves. I have a few questions that I'll ask just to begin the conversation, but please at any time submit any of your questions through the Q&A function in Zoom, and we will answer those directly. If it's for a particular alumni, please just address your question to that alumni. If not, we will have the question open to our panel. So without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to our alumni who are joining us today. And if you would like to state your name, your position, where you work, and also what degree or degrees you received from Ohio State.
I can start. Okay, fine. Go ahead. Please go ahead.
Okay, cool. I can go first. I'm Jayanthi Sampathkumar, and I live in Hyderabad. I graduated from Ohio State with a couple of masters. I joined in '95, and then I did a master's in material science, and then I did a master's in computer science, and then graduated in '99 with 2 masters, and then I joined Microsoft in the campus interview with campus interviews, and since then I have been in Microsoft. In 2005, our whole family decided to move back to India to Microsoft. So that's the background, and I constantly think of my learning in Ohio State, and I leverage that as much as I can. That's it.
Okay, I am Mouli. We'll just keep it short at Mouli. I am currently a professor in the Department of Mechanical Engineering at IIT Madras, which is in Chennai. I graduated, I have 2 degrees from Ohio State, a master's in 1990 and a PhD from mechanical engineering, both from mechanical engineering. I graduated in 1994. I spent about 3 years in industry following that, a company called Copeland Corporation, which now goes by the name of Emerson Climate Technologies. So essentially all my stay in the US was in Ohio. So I moved from Columbus to a place called Sydney, which is north of Dayton. So that's where I was for 3 years. Then came back to India in 97, joined this academic position, been with IIT Madras ever since. So that's a brief background of me.
Good morning, everybody, and good evening to everybody in India. I'm Thiru Srinivasan. I arrived at Ohio State in 1989. Fantastic memories. I was there for 2 years. I graduated with my master's in mechanical engineering and also with an adjunct certificate from the industrial engineering school there. That was in 1991. Subsequent to that, I joined 3M in North Dakota. So really, I was there for about 7 winters and really enjoyed my job there. My thesis and my work, the reason I came to Ohio State was all about manufacturing, my interest in manufacturing. So worked in 3M, worked in iOmega, that was in Utah, and then was for a brief couple years in Singapore, came back to Indiana working for a company called Rexnord. And in 2003, moved back to India. Moving back to India, I worked for American multinationals, pretty much one after the other, 3 multinationals in India, bringing them to India, establishing them, often establishing new factories and creating a lot of jobs. And it's been a fantastic start for my career with what I learned at Ohio State and the kind of projects that I did there, and very cross-functional, right? Today, we do a lot of cross-functional work at my undergraduate institution here in India, IIT Madras. What I saw there was really fantastic. And that has continued with me in my career. Since 2012, I have been advising many companies in new product development and manufacturing. Currently, my focus is on electric vehicles. Indian electric vehicle industry tends to be more focused on 2-wheelers and 3-wheelers, and that's where I focus my energies on. And that's what I do. Look forward to hearing from others and answering your questions.
Hi there, good evening and good morning. I am Vishwanath Swarup, go by Vishy. I did my master's in industrial and systems engineering in 2004. Post that, I worked for Unilever in the US. And then realized that I needed to do something more substantive in life. So moved from FMCG, fast moving consumer goods, into healthcare. And I joined a company called Wyatt. We got acquired, became Pfizer. So worked with Pfizer for a few years in the US. And then in 2011, decided to move back to India and joined McKinsey & Company over here in India as a management consultant, coming back to India. Did that, and then after that, I've been working in different parts of healthcare. Little bit of American multinationals till now. My last role was with Abbott Healthcare in India, running one of their commercial units. And then post that, I'm now joined a private equity owned pharma company called Bharat Serums. It's owned by Advent, which is one of the leading healthcare private equity funds. And I'm the chief operating officer there, so running the operations there. Definitely have a lot of memories of the campus and Ohio State. I mean, just the main library, and those visuals, whenever they come to mind, they always kind of bring some memories to you. What you should have done and what you shouldn't have done. But yeah, nevertheless, it was always fun, and those memories and walk around the campus is just something that I think we all kind of have it in close to our hearts. So absolutely close to my heart that way. Look forward to the discussion today, and hopefully providing some answers and some clarifying some queries.
Thank you all for those wonderful introductions. And again, students, please feel free to submit questions and answers. I already see a few coming in here, so I'm going to get those into the queue to make sure those are asked. One of the first sort of questions I was thinking about as we were designing an event like this, where we have the opportunity to speak to alumni around the globe, is, the field of engineering is so unique, and it really does, you see these differences by region, by country. For many of you, you worked here in the US, North Dakota, Indiana, Dayton, and now all of you being in India. What, how do you see the field sort of evolving where you are right now in India compared to your work back here domestically in the States?
Okay, let me take this first. When I came to US, I was very, very clear. I want to come and learn a lot of manufacturing technology. I want to work in manufacturing, and particularly in hard goods, new products. And over the years, manufacturing had moved out of US, and you look at what's happening in China, what's happening in India. I spent a lot of years in China and also spent several years in India now. Manufacturing in India is starting to grow, and all the learning and all the approaches that I picked up in US and US companies is very, very valuable in quickly bringing the Indian manufacturing industry up and about. Still a long way to go. For example, getting translational research and R&D being done on technology development in new products and manufacturing is starting to happen in India, starting to pick up speed only recently. So I see a tremendous amount of growth in manufacturing technologies in India, and so that's very, very healthy.
Sure. I'll answer it from a more general perspective, right? I think there's a content piece to it, of course. If you're looking for content, absolutely it'll be sector dependent. But I think one comment I will make on the content piece is, I think the work which is happening here or in the emerging markets, and I'm putting India as kind of like the forefront of it, is much faster in terms of pace, right? In terms of change and adaptability. It's what takes probably 2 years in the US would probably need to be done in 6 months in India. So the pace, whatever content you have, I think the pace of change is very, very high, right? The other general comment I would want to make is, when you're running a business or doing anything in the US, using the economic theory, it's like a perfectly competitive market. All the data, everything is available, everything is organized, and you would imagine that, life would be so easy with that, but it's not. doing business or running anything in the US is because you're following the game theory. Everybody knows what's happening, right? So it's a hyper competitive market in that space, in any segment. And that's why I think the US tends to be the powerhouse of the global economy, right? On the flip side, in India, when you look at it from a US, and when I used to look at it, I would say, how would you run business with no data availability? So many, I mean, in my segment, retail, etc. But in India also, there are a lot of analytics which are run, and they're put to good use, right? And business decisions, sound business decisions are made on that. And it's a little bit of, running with that 70-30 or 60-40, not 80-20. But when you have 60% perfect data or 60% accuracy, it's okay. Because again, it's game theory. Everybody's kind of dealing with the same thing. And I think from that perspective, it's easier to compete. But there are different challenges, right? I mean, in terms of regulations, etc. So I think anybody looking at it from a US standpoint, one has to make sure that they are aware of a very different pace, pace of change, pace of work, etc., etc. And the second thing I would say is, you know, it's a very different way of how you approach problems, and lack of data, etc. There are still ways to triangulate stuff and do things, and don't get too hung up on everything has to be like a road has to have 2 lanes. It's okay. We're now probably one of the largest car markets, and we don't have the lane driving system in India, and we still are okay. So that's what I would advise.
Yeah, in my case, of course, I moved on from industry to academia, but I am a fairly active consultant to the engineering industry, specifically mechanical engineering industry. So like Thiru said, I see them evolving. Today, when I first landed up, probably people weren't thinking about developing products or developing technologies on their own. But I've seen that evolve over, especially in the last 10 to 12 years, the amount of innovation and the product development that has started to happen simply because the economy opened up, and Honda didn't have to tie up with somebody within the country. That was the old regulation, and now you have to compete with Honda in order to be to stay relevant. And so these kind of things automatically have brought out the innovativeness which has been locked up for a long time thanks to the old regulation. So I see as an outsider, because I do visit a number of companies as a consultant solving their problems. So I see change in the attitude, and that has changed. Also, from an academic perspective, although I have not been in a US academic environment as a faculty, but definitely having spent 6 years and then periodically visiting various places across the world, we are pretty much catching up. The focus is kind of shifting more and more. Whether it is good or bad is open, but we probably are aligning ourselves with the rest of the world in terms of the expectations and the challenges. Of course, it's a lot more difficult because the university, the education system here has its own challenges in terms of the products that come in. And we are not talking about, when you may say, well, I'm from IIT Madras, I get wonderful products. But our products that really matter are the graduate students, because many of them go abroad and never to return. So the graduate students who come from, the next tier education system, the higher education system, have to be trained quite a bit. The US benefits from the best brains across the world, but we have that handicap, and we still have to compete with the rest of the world. So that's really the challenge. And I think we are doing quite well as we go along. The next decade or so, we should see ourselves compete with the rest of the world.
Nice. So let me add my views on this. From my perspective, there is not so much difference per se in terms of the work I did. So I was in, like I told you, I've been in Microsoft for my entire career of 21 years. And I was in the US for about 6 years, and I've been in India for 15 years. There's not so much difference in terms of the work I do, the impact that I'm able to create with the work I do with respect to the work that I do in the US or what I do in India. I was, that was a long time ago. So I was a junior person. I was an individual contributor, writing a lot of code and things like that. Now I lead big teams. And if I were in the US, my peers with a similar kind of experience, they are leading big teams. And I currently work on Bing, but I've worked on various products in Microsoft, and I'm also changing. I'm going to be working on Azure and so on. So it's great. I mean, from a corporate company like a Microsoft, or I'm sure it's similar for Google and many other big corporate companies, the culture is pretty similar. The quality of the work you do here or the quality of the work you do in the US, it's all pretty similar. Here you lead a team, you could do good engineering work, you do good technical work. So it's all pretty similar. So of course, the salary is lower here than the last salary in the US, but for the same work. But other than that, in terms of your lifestyle, it's better. I mean, you get help at home. So the whole lifestyle is better. You get household help and things like that, which probably I would not be having if I were living in the US. So similar work, good impactful work, better lifestyle, even though the salary is lower and you get to be with family. So those are the differences I see. My parents moved to, I actually am originally from Chennai too, but when I moved to Hyderabad because I wanted to work in Microsoft, and Microsoft was in Hyderabad, the development center, and my parents moved here to kind of stay with me, and we kind of figured out a setup where they can stay next door but not with me because they also need their own space. So all this setup I can do. I mean, I can't imagine doing any of this setup in the US. So it's been quite comfortable, and I get good work. I lead a team. I've even led like 100% team, and within Microsoft, I've moved a couple of times in the US. I've moved 2-3 times here in India. Within Microsoft, it's the same environment. So that's basically what it is.
Thank you all for sharing your perspectives on that. I have a question here. It's addressed to Thiru, but I also wanted to open it up after he addresses it. You know, Thiru, you talked about your interest in going into manufacturing. You talked about working at 3M. And it seemed like that was something that you knew that you wanted to do from the very beginning. How did you know that that was something that you wanted to do from the start in terms of your career?
Right. I think I have to thank the tradition of many of my seniors from my institution going to US and especially to Ohio State. In fact, there was a steady trend of a significant number of students who moved from IIT Madras to Ohio State. So we used to be in touch and we used to talk about that. And you also know about the industrial belt. You know, what do you talk about? The Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Minnesota belt. So there's a lot of news that used to get about the industries there. And so very inspiring as a young person. And for me, it did not take too much of an effort to decide to come to Ohio State. Obviously, you know, the fellowship helped. So for me, coming to Ohio State was automatically a good decision. In fact, around the time I was graduating, we had a recession. This was 1989, and GM was going through a lot of trouble and things like that. But some of the jobs were dream jobs. Some of the jobs that I got, and I finally decided to go to 3M, where they made 1 million diskettes per day. that kind of manufacturing was happening in US at that time. And the amount of engineering that you could do on raw materials, on machines, on process technologies, on statistics, how you applied some of the data analytical techniques in those days, those were completely new to a manufacturing operation in India. So it was definitely a major attraction for me at that time. So that's how it worked out.
And I'll open that up to our other alumni. Where you are right now in your career, did you know that that's the trajectory that you wanted when you started, or did that change over time, whether it be during your time at Ohio State or even perhaps as you went abroad and began your work? Did that change for you, or did you always know that you wanted this sort of trajectory for your career?
So let me take that question. So I actually did 2 masters in Ohio State. I did my undergraduate in metallurgical engineering in IIT BHU here, and I went to US to do my master's and a PhD in material science and engineering at the Ohio State University. I finished my master's, and as I was nearing the end of my master's, like Thiru was saying, there was a recession, and I picked up some skills on the side, and I realized that's where my passion is in terms of computer science and all the things I want to do with programming and building software. I felt that's where my passion is. And I did a good material science master's. There was some modeling work also in what I was doing. I was actually writing some programs in Fortran for my material science master's as well. So it all added up. Then I ended up doing some prerequisite courses for the computer science department over the summer, and then applying formally to the computer science department and basically getting an admission for a master's in computer science. Stayed on a couple of more years and did a research paper as well in my master's in computer science, both material science as well as computer science. I graduated with a master's with a thesis actually. Even though computer science had an option of an exam, I actually did a thesis. So yes, my course changed. When I stepped in, I was going to do a PhD in material science, and my course changed. And I actually think Ohio State is a great place where there are so many different fields of study that you have the flexibility to explore. You have the flexibility to connect with people working in so many different fields and explore and figure out what your passion is. And since then, I have been working on in Microsoft. I mean, so you can see that my computer science degree, and I'm working in Microsoft. I'm still working in Microsoft. So I have a question here. Somebody asked a question in terms of what did I learn? One of the biggest things I learned is trust I mean, if you have passionate about something, follow it and do what it takes, because at least Ohio State gave me that environment and the ability to kind of explore, saying, this is my passion, I can go do it. And also, it's very hard for somebody to say, man, you started out doing a PhD in material science. How can you walk away from that? Even that, exploring your passion and being able to change, is also something called growth mindset. It's something that Satya and like a lot of people today talk about. And that is also that. So I felt Ohio State gave me the freedom to explore and do what I liked. Yeah. Thank you.
I guess I can talk to that as well. When I joined Ohio State, I actually joined in the mechanical engineering department. I had done an undergrad in mechanical engineering, and then I think after the first quarter, started talking in the industrial and systems engineering and found that very interesting. Always had a little bit of business, I guess, because my father was a small business owner, so had that, and gravitated towards that and changed my master's within, I think, a quarter and a half. And the school was very supportive of that. So that happened. And then I guess after doing my master's, I went into Unilever, and then they put me into a rotational program where first year I actually worked in a manufacturing setup, frontline production supervisor and ran production lines, and then ran a global study in my next assignment. So it gave me a very good kind of cross-cutting across different functions. And I think what I started saying now is never say never. I didn't plan on coming back to India. I ended up coming back to India. I said never move to Mumbai. I am sitting in Mumbai today. Been 6 years. So I just stopped saying never say never. You never know. Just I think is just enjoy what you're doing at that time. It's easier said than done. There's a lot of noise in life which kind of takes away from it. But and once you've been to Ohio State, etc., opportunities will come your way, and you just have to evaluate it and not be a little open-minded to try stuff out, right? I mean, if you don't do that, and especially earlier on in your career, you've got to take those risks, and some of those definitely will not work out, but that's okay. I mean, earlier on in your career, you can actually recalibrate and come back. So that would be my clear advice. I've done companies, countries, and cities. So far, so good.
I think I see Harish has joined. He probably has a very, very interesting story about the career switches that he has made. So let us listen to him and I'll come back. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Molly. And thank you for joining us, Harish. I know that you were coming from a client meeting, but we so appreciate your time. So if you wouldn't mind, Harish, just introducing yourself, your position, what you're currently doing, and also your degrees degrees that you had received from Ohio State.
Sure, Aaron. So good evening and good morning. And Molly, great to see you, man. We this is awesome. I mean, we spent many a days and nights in the lab.
Yes.
In Robinson Lab. Well, Robinson Lab is not there anymore, but we have a better facility. Hey, thanks for having me here, and I apologize. I hope you guys can hear me. I apologize for being late. Yes, I unfortunately was pulled into a meeting. So to give you a little bit of my background, as you said, I graduated from Ohio State in, I believe it was 95, with a master's and PhD in mechanical engineering. A year junior to Molly, I think, maybe 6 months or 8 months. I don't know, something like that. And then it was great because we worked in the same town after that for a couple of years. I worked at Goodrich Aerospace, and that was near Columbus. We made wheels and brakes. So first of all, just going back a little bit, when I came to US, I was fresh out of a small town. I mean, at least Molly, you were from Chennai, man, big town. I grew up in a small town and then went to Kanpur, which is another small town, well, kind of, IIT Kanpur. And then, of course, we ended up with a master's in mechanical engineering and met Professor Don Hauser. And I can tell you, I have to say he molded my life. He really did. Yeah. I mean, his practical look at problems was something new to me. We don't quite learn that in undergrad schools. Now we do, but in those days, I mean, it was difficult in India. We were more theoretical. So when I went there and I had folks like Molly and others and working on real things, and Dr. Hauser, his hands in oil every day and wrenches and stuff like that, and he gave me this big rig, huge rig if Molly remembers. Yeah, I had no idea. I mean, this had, gosh, 1,000. I don't know, I forget now, but a huge motor on one end, a water brake on the other, and he told me, all right, so now get me results on misalignment of gears. I'm like, okay. So which button do I now switch on? So I just heard Vish talking about risk. That was the first thing. I'm like, wow, you know, um, the belief that Hauser had in his students and the responsibilities that he gave to his students really molded who we are, because it was tough. But you know what? Once I got into it, you can see I have a printer here, 3D printer. I mean, that's what I do now, even though I'm not in that field officially, but I still am a mechanical engineer. So anyway, so there, and then did my PhD with Dr. Singh and Dr. Hauser both. Now, that's what you get at mechanical engineering, at least when we were there. Dr. Hauser was a very client-facing, very practical oriented, hands-on person. And here was Dr. Singh, who knew math and who knew all these theories. And when you meld it together, and I'm sure Molly will say the same thing, we had both. We had the both great world, you know. On one hand, we were doing simulations, and on the other hand, we were testing it. And the rigs were right there. I mean, it was amazing. Anyway, so after that, went to Goodrich Aerospace, was running R&D there, doing finite element. Oh, before that, here's what happened, which again set my path. So during my last year there, I did an internship at Sikorsky Helicopters. And that was because Sikorsky was part of GearLab, I believe, or wanted to be, or something like that. And I go there, that's the practical side of it, right? All of a sudden, I'm thrown into this manufacturing unit with engineering sitting on top of it. And my supervisor, who was the chief of engineering, another Don Hauser, and he just sent me off running to the shop and said, look, there's a problem somewhere. Can you see and tell me what's happening? And you go there and you look at the parts, and here are these Black Hawks, right? Black Hawks in line from scratch to flying out. And you have these CH-53 Super Stallions. And I'm a kid from school. But you get those opportunities. That's where I was going to. So anyways, after Goodrich, Sikorsky, and I kept talking, and they said, hey, why don't you come over? So I went there, was running R&D, did a lot of work with the Army, was the chief engineer for Comanche helicopters. S-92 was going on. These are all 20 years back, right? 30 now, maybe, I forget. Time flies, right? And did a lot of work there. But everything that I learned in the lab and what I learned theoretically came into use there. So that's what the education did for me, the higher education. So after that, one of my friends from IIT Kanpur came back, senior. And by the way, my wife also is a PhD from Ohio State. We were together. She was in Department of Chemistry, Biochemistry, and she earned her PhD there and went on to work in many places now, of course. So anyway, so at that point, I got together with one of my friends and we thought, hey, let's do something in India. It's time to give back. After all, our education was free in India. So we set up a startup, and of course, at that time, business process outsourcing was the thing, and I knew nothing about it. Absolutely zero, right? Nothing. I'm an engineer. I do math and a little bit. Molly would say I don't do math. I do more of engineering, whatever. He did math. But, so, yep, I remember those integration routines that you gave me. Thankful for those. But anyway, so came back to India, read up a lot of these Gartner reports to understand what BPO was all about. And you know what I found was that even as an engineer, I was making something physically and mechanically. Here I had to construct a whole company from scratch. And it was great. I mean, we went from 5 people to 1,500. We got funding from Carlyle. Then our company was acquired by another company, which got acquired by another, and finally got acquired by where I am today, NTT, Nippon Telegraph and Telephone, one of the largest IT services company out there. And we grew from 5 people. Now we are 24,000 in India. So I consider that as It's very satisfying. Of course, a part of that is through acquisition, not all organic. But here's what happened. So all the study and all the training at Ohio State and the technical training and the technical side of it came back full force, because this year I was given charge of running the entire technology R&D section for entity data services. So today I was in BPO and I was running people, and today my group is creating the enterprise digital solution or platform that all our solutions to all our clients are based on. Very, very satisfying. That's my story. Love it.
Very good evening to you, Harish. Thiru here.
Hey, Thiru, how are you?
Good,
see
good.
You. Good to see you.
Yeah, this is Robinson Lab.
Lab, of course.
All right.
Oh my gosh, memories. Yeah.
Well, I see one of the questions that had been posed to Jayanthi, and thank you for responding, was talking about what you learned and sort of leveraging your experiences. And that's something that I'd like to open up to everyone. You know, oftentimes we tell students, leverage your experiences because it's going to help you get to that next step. What sort of practical ways have you been able to leverage your experiences, whether it be experiences that you had back in the classroom here in Columbus, or those experiences that you had sort of in your first job out of college?
So I'm sure you're asking everyone, right? I think I did my monologue.
Yes, it's an open question. So feel free to jump in, Harish, if you'd like, or anyone's able to take that question.
Okay, let me go on that.
Yeah,
yeah, sorry, Molly. Actually, one of the biggest things that you learned at Ohio State for me was the cross-functional. You take courses in all the various departments. You take in chemical engineering, you do in industrial engineering, you do a lot of hands-on, like what Harsh was talking about. And you also meet people from various countries. You work with people from the US, from people from Turkey, from Taiwan, from China, from India, from other European countries. So you get to work with people from various cultures, various points of view, various strengths. There are some people who bring in strength in math, some people who bring in strength in doing things by hand, some people who bring strength in modeling in their mind, philosophical approaches. It's huge amount of learning because of this. It's very fertile cross-pollination of many things that you learn. And when you go to work in many of the US companies, for example, for me, 3M, and later Iomega, companies like that, you are given a lot of responsibility and also freedom. You're given a lot of room to try things, but also how do you self-manage rather than being told what to do. You learn a lot of that. And you do really develop products that go into production, manufacturing within a year or 6 months. A lot of that has helped foster innovation in whatever we are doing in India today. There's so much cross-pollination has happened back in India with that experience. And also working in multinational companies out of the US, you do travel to China, to various parts of the US, to Europe, and things like that. So that global experience, that open mind, is what you really gain out of coming to a place like Ohio State. And that's what translates back.
Okay, I'll just add, I think Thiru has already touched upon the fact that one of the great things about Ohio State and universities in general in the US is the kind of people that you come across in the way that you learn to handle different cultural, people from different cultural backgrounds, and yet we all get along. So of course, even though we are from India and we, within the country do have these subdivisions, but there is a vast difference when you kind of handle with this. On the learning side, there are a few things that my advisor, he mentioned Professor Raj Singh, whose student I was. The key thing that, two things that he always said, one of the things is the dissertation is irrelevant, So it's funny that I'm saying this after being in an academic career. What is important is the learning, being very, very strong at fundamentals. I'll follow this up why it is important. And so he said, look, you got to get your foundations to be very, very strong, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. And lifelong learning. You cannot say that, okay, I've got a PhD and there ends my story. So this strong foundation is very important because the day I landed at Copeland Corporation, one of the engineers landed up and said, here is a compressor that I want to have reliability testing done on. And I had no clue what reliability testing was, right? Having done a PhD in nonlinear dynamics and transmission dynamics, suddenly somebody says, I want a reliability testing done. Of course, my boss laughed and said, this is your first day, I will help you out with this. But in the 3 years, I could very easily move into solving various kinds of problems thanks to that strong foundation. So I think, and his advice that learning doesn't stop. So I had to learn, like Harsh said, you read up, you go see. In fact, I have to thank my boss. The second day he put me on a tear down analysis of a compressor. So we had to pull down, and I had a few parts left at the end of reassembling that compressor. I said, where did this go? Sit there, so you learn. So a lot of these things. So the two things that I have carried along, I have not deviated, unlike Harsh, who has a very colorful career. I have been a boring academic for 23 years. But I have not stuck to one area within the academics. Today, I work on musical acoustics. I work a lot for the past 5 years. I work on musical pillars. How do they make sound? I work on Indian musical instruments today, whereas I was looking at machines before for the last 15 years. Now I'm looking at completely different things. So this switch is enabled by the fact that I have no fear of learning something new and then plunging into that. Although I still remain an academic, I am not moved out of that. I love what I'm doing, and as he said, I like math, and therefore I've kind of. But I as I remarked earlier, I do keep my applications in mind, but I've moved into a number of domains after every 5 years or 6 years, and the challenge of learning new things has kept me alive. Today, I'm doing digital image processing as a mechanical engineer. I have, we do now capture. I have sat down with students, learned the technologies. Today, we capture videos, and I can predict vibration and sound from digital images. Right, so you keep learning. So the key thing is you have to adapt. You have to learn keep an open mind, learn new things as you go along, and your fundamentals have to be very strong, no matter what field it is. Right. So this is very key to having a successful career. So that's why Harsh was able to. He was very strong fundamentally. Really strong character. Fun character to have around, So anyway, as he said, our association didn't end at Columbus. We in fact worked in the same town. We used to cook together, watch TV together. So so a lot of things that we have exchanged from each other. Picked up from him, and he's probably picked one or two things from me. So the two things that I will leave you with is always be ready to learn, be flexible, and whatever you learn, fundamentals are very important if you want to do well in a career.
Yeah, I can't I can't agree more, Molly. I still know how to cook that South Indian eggplant curry. I know that, man. No, just kidding. but I do know. Fundamentals is what you're absolutely right. I mean, education is all about learning how to learn. And as long as we can do that, then nothing is really new. I mean, it's there, and you just have to learn about it, and that carries. And that's something that one gets from, that one doesn't get from a very, very extremely structured, extremely narrow education. That's what you get when you're left with guidance, but left to explore. And I believe we did that. I mean, I remember, that Bay lab that we had and the big acoustic chamber.
Right.
We just kept exploring things. I mean, and our professors, I mean, they were guiding us, but I think there was this feeling that, you guys go ahead and find a way to do this. And I think that's the learning part. Yeah. Quite effective.
Vishwanath or Jayanthi, is there anything else that you'd like to add from your perspectives?
Oh, I think it's not a new point. I guess the points which have already been made, just wanted to reaffirm that. I guess it's just the ability to continuously learn. And I think when you have been part of such a large community and student body like Ohio State, right? It's not just the classroom learning, it's the learning that happens on campus and just being associated, right? And how you're now open to, and I mean, I grew up in a very small town, Kanpur, which I think Harsh mentioned. So coming from there, I think just keeping my eyes open and getting to learn new things and new cultures, that at that time, of course, it feels very experimental and you're just doing it as students, right? But it actually changes and molds your character and your mindset. And so when you come back, you're a very different individual, and meaning back, especially when you come back to the same context as India, you're a very different individual in how, not only personally, but professionally, how you operate. And honestly, that's a skill that sets you apart in my mind versus a traditional education that someone has gone through. Nothing wrong with it. But I think that cultural sensitivity and awareness that you get by being part of a large student community is uncomparable. And that's a learning that we shouldn't, so to say, underestimate.
Yes, completely agree with everything that Chandramouli and Harsh and Vishwanath, everybody said. It's basically multicultural, learning to work with multicultural set of people, right? Even when you come back to India, even when you go work for somewhere else in the US. I remember having one person from China, one person from Germany, and all sorts of different cultural people. So those are things that you learn for life. And completely agree with Chandramouli on the fundamentals. It's the fundamentals that you learn and the strong foundations that you're laying with the education in Ohio State. And on that strong foundation, you can build so much more wherever you go. I really think that is how it has helped me in having that strong foundation in everything else that I do.
Thank you. And I see we have a follow-up question for Molly. In terms of, you talked about having strong fundamentals. Could you maybe expound on what you mean by having those strong fundamentals?
Yeah, okay. I mean, from an engineering perspective, especially mechanical engineering, there are, if you were to design and make a product, there are, you have to get your basic things that you will need to know would be subjects like, I will relate it from that. I'm sure for other domains, there are things that, very similar things that you will have to know if you were to, move forward and do something constructive. So you need to have a very strong fundamentals in mechanics, in manufacturing that Thiru was talking about. If I don't know how to translate, see, when I do a design, I need to have a clear idea of how I'm going to manufacture this, right? If I didn't know that, there's no use. It will remain a nice paper design and I don't know how to translate that. So, and then of course, all the other things as part of the design and manufacturing process, the math, there is today a lot of things happen at, at a computational level before we even get into making a product, right? So, and many of us tend to treat this as black boxes, and a lot of the software companies will want to sell this and people keep using this without really knowing and get answers which are which they have no way of that. If I had all those fundamentals, so in this case a bit of math, a good design knowledge, a good manufacturing knowledge, I'm talking about a mechanical engineering context. If I had these three, then moving and doing things become very, very easy. Someone asked about, I didn't know how engineering could be applied to musical instruments. If you think about it, a musical instrument has to be designed and made. So in effect, whatever it is, and over the years, one of the things that you will notice is that the Indian instruments still have more of an art rather than a real engineering, so to speak. So I have seen potential in this to say that, can I use what I know, very basic design and manufacturing principles, to improve this product? So that is where I have gotten into. Of course, I worked on all musical instruments make music. My background, actually, I forgot to say, was in sound and vibration. So therefore, instead of noisy machines, which are unwanted sound and vibration, I am now moved to more pleasant things, which is music. So the principles remain the same. That is what I wanted to point out, that, I am still using the same things that I learned, but I'm now applying it to very, very challenging problems. Especially the Indian instruments are very, very interesting in terms of the design, the construction. So I'm trying to modernize many of these things through the fundamentals that I have learned. I'm not, research is all about, so some of us, I am in the research domain. Many of them will choose research careers. In research, it is also the fundamentals which is very, very important. And you cannot do, research that happens at Ohio State is one of the forefront universities in research. Cannot happen if people are not strong on fundamentals. You cannot build, like a civil engineer will say, if my foundation isn't very strong, I cannot keep loading things on it. You will never be able to move on. So for each of these domains, there are some skill sets, like Jayanthi said, for computer science, there will be a set of basic skill sets that you have to be thorough in. And you can build whatever, you can move in different domains in computer science with that basic skill sets. And I'm sure Vishwanath, Vishy will also say similar things. Of course, Harish is the one who has really leveraged those skill sets and had different careers, so he's done all those things. But at the bottom line, he said, he had a nice catchphrase. I think education is all about learning to learn. Am I quoting you correctly, Harsh? So I think that is the key. So yeah. So I think that is the key. So fundamentals will vary from domain to domain, but each domain has a certain set of skill sets that are a must. If that is weak, you will not be able to move far in that domain.
Wonderful, thank you. And I know, I'm sorry, Thiru, I just wanted to give an opportunity. I know Vishwanath is going to have to hop off here. And if there's any students, I know we're running up on an hour, and we had planned anywhere from 60 to 90 minutes, depending on this conversation. But I just want to ask one question of Vishwanath before you hop off. What's one piece of advice that you would give our students that would want to have an engineering career abroad?
Okay, let me go on that. I think it's very, very important that you have an open mind and identify opportunities.
Is it just me or, sorry?
Oh, I'm sorry, Vishwanath, I know you have to hop off here. If you wouldn't mind,
okay.
Vishwanath, I'd love to hear, and then we can open that up. I apologize for the confusion on that.
Sure. So could you repeat the question? I couldn't hear. There was some trouble with my internet here.
I had just asked, what's one piece of advice that you would give these students that would want to have a career abroad?
Right. So first, have an open mind. I think that's the single biggest thing. I mean, like I said, never say never, that kind of thing, right? I took my first job in Unilever just because I was enamored by that brand name growing up in India, right? Everybody knows those brands, and I just wanted to be part of that company with those big brands, right? But then later on realized it's all just marketing gimmickry at the end of the day, and I needed to have some purpose in life, and hence moved to healthcare, right? And I think my single never say never. Keep an open mind. Don't take a traditional lens, and especially for people who've been in developed markets for a longer duration. Don't apply that frame of reference in an emerging market context, right? I think there are sectors like I think Jayanthi will attest to it, and she said it. It's very similar to what it was. The environment was in the US versus here, but that is not the majority of when you're working in the emerging market, right? If you're really getting into the emerging market, talk to Thiru about how manufacturing is very different in India than what it is there, right? It will be very, very different. So don't fall into the trap of applying the same frame of reference and saying this is how it's always done. You will have to improvise, and again, going back to continue to adapt, kind of thing. And those are the typical pitfalls I see people making, and then start saying this is better and this is worse. Honestly, it's never that simple. It's always different, right? And there are positives and negatives on each side. It's how you play up those the positives to overcome the negatives is the game. So good luck to everyone. I think the economies, and I know COVID's kind of taken a step back, etc. We are living in a global economy. Careers are going to be global. At some level, I would say you don't have a choice but to build a global career, right? I mean, otherwise, if you've invested so much of your time, your years, your money in going to a nice school like Ohio State, it's only fair to kind of to be yourself and really maximize that on the career side and make an impact in what you do. So that's what I would leave the student body with. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Vishwanath, and we greatly appreciate
and thank you to all my panelists. It's been wonderful connecting with fellow Buckeyes. Thank you, and hopefully, if anybody of you are in Mumbai anytime, will be great to catch up.
Thank you, Vishwanath. Take care.
Thanks.
And I apologize, Thiru, I didn't mean to cause confusion. I think we had a bit of a delay with the audio there. So I will put the question back to you then, and feel free to answer that.
Yeah, I think it's what I was going to say is exactly what Vish said. Have a very open mind. There are opportunities in multiple places. With a very strong educational foundation, experiential foundation that you get at Ohio State, be very confident that you can go after a lot of opportunities. And if you enjoy that, you'll be able to do very, very well. And I think having a closed mind, this is what I want to do, and this is what I will do. When I was trying to come back to India in 2003, a lot of people questioned me, why are you going back to India? There's so much opportunity here. Every place, like Vish touched upon that also, every place has opportunities. And with your strong foundation, you're going to be able to tap into those opportunities and make it come to fruit. And that could be anywhere. There are people who have gone, and Indians who have gone and lived in China and thrived very well. So I think that's one piece of advice I'd leave it with. leave everybody with, and wish everybody the very best. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I would add on to that. Have an open mind, be ready to learn, and you will learn a lot, and especially the large student body and cross-cultural kind of student body. There's a lot you will learn, and that will set you up for a truly great career ahead, strong fundamentals, all of that. So look forward to have an open mindset and be ready to learn. That's pretty much what I would say. And we've all been, as you can see from the panels we've gone, and my husband is also one of the Ohio State alumni. And like Harish was saying, his wife is also Ohio State alumni. So there's we have friends and friends for life and families for life. There's a large student body. It's been a great home when we were there. So yes, it's a great place. So I think have an open mind and be ready to learn. It's not always up, there's always ups and downs, but there's also learning, like coming from India, going there and to shovel the snow and frost on the car. You will learn all of those as well, but those are all things that set you up for a strong, make you stronger and set you up for a strong career and a road ahead and all that. So, thank you.
Shoveling snow, that's, yeah, I lived in Connecticut for a very long time. And yeah, we did that every day for much of the year. But, you know, Jayanthi, what you just said about learning new things, it was a little different when I went to college there because we did not have internet. I mean, email had just come out, right? And we really didn't know how the world looked like in that true sense. Like TV was one thing. So this anecdote. It's funny and it's also, I was ashamed of it for quite a while, but yeah, all in fun, right? So we go there and Molly was there, of course, but there was an Indian community, thriving Indian community, which there is today. And one of the folks from IIT Kanpur came and picked me up from the airport and said, "You can stay in my house for as long as you want till you get your, feet." And that was really nice because I'm coming from a small town. I had only gone to Delhi once in my lifetime, and that was to get a visa, right? And I'm at this place where it is just so alien, truly alien, right? And one of the things that, this is the story. So we then found our apartment, and Ohio State is a friendly place, friendly people, Midwest, all's good. But there was this one thing on the corner of our street which puzzled us, and that was this Coke machine, Coca-Cola machine. And it was there, and people would get cans from there, and I didn't know how to do that. I was too ashamed to go there in the daytime. So my fellow buddy and I, we went at 12 midnight when it was all dark. There was no one there with coins in hand. Like, okay, let's try it out. So just a story, right? But it remains in my mind as the new things you explore. Obviously, those things are past us because we are really a global community now. But there are still new things which you explore when you live there, and it makes you a whole. It makes you able to work with the larger world, as we all here seem to be doing, right? I mean, my morning starts with calls with Japan, Australia, even worse. And then it's Europe, China, not right now, but I used to go there, right? And then it's Europe, and the evenings, like right now, it's all about clients in the US. But that's what it gave me, as all of you said, this perspective that it's a large world, and you can learn a lot and you can thrive. So thanks again. Yeah.
Yeah, just to add to the various things, I think in today, almost any domain, you talked about engineering careers abroad. So even if you didn't venture out and work outside of your country, the fact is that today you cannot escape from traveling and spending time with the client, almost any domain that you can pick, whether it is, especially in engineering, it is completely global. So, I know people, so I think that has opened up a lot of things. So my advice, if anything, in fact, during my PhD, I got to spend about 4 months in Japan with Nissan, who were funding my PhD, work. And believe me, I landed up there knowing not a single word of Japanese. And I had to survive for about 4 months. It teaches you so many things. So I think that kind of experience, going out somewhere, and if not, a permanent station in a country outside, but at least, spend a few months working with an organization, dealing with people, learning new things, widens your horizon, and it, in the long run, makes a big difference to your career. So I think, yes, today those opportunities, like Harsh said, we didn't, there was no WWW when we were students, and probably more productive because of that. But of course, today we are able to chat.
There was Doom that we
okay.
played.
Yeah. So, but of course, thanks to the internet, we are able to chat today. So there are positives and negatives for any technology, but it is so connected that I would say that definitely you should take an opportunity to explore life abroad, and at least for a short while, just to get the widening of your horizon. It will help your career in a big way. So you may not permanently sit in a foreign country, but I think at least spending some time there would certainly go a long way in making you a better professional.
Well, I think I speak for all of the students that are attending this and that will be watching this on the recording, is that I've learned so much from each of you today, talking about your experiences, whether it be Harish and Molly talking about your own experiences back in Columbus. And I think for some of our students, they don't realize that the students that are sitting next to them, they could be the next COOs, CEOs, CFOs of these companies. You never know where you're going to see your classmates 15, 20, 30 years down the road. But I think it also speaks, as you've each said, just the global reach of the Ohio State University, that there are so many alumni, there are so many individuals that are part of our community, that truly we are on a global campus. So, I really do hope that those that are attending this see that. And I think each of you are prime examples of what the Ohio State global community looks like.
And I removed my mirroring because I wanted to show this. It's called Modern Methods of Gear Manufacture. Molly and I would know this. I never go anywhere without this. Don't leave your engineering background, ever.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Really been a pleasure.
Yeah,
well, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a pleasure interacting with all of you. I learned so much from some of these very senior and esteemed alumni, really. Thank you.
And a special shout out to Vinod and Nikhil, who really helped collaborate on this, connecting us with these wonderful alumni. But before we close for our attendees, I just did want to mention that this is the first of 3 panel conversations that we'll be having. And I am putting in the chat here a link to the Global Engineering website. There you can find more information about our event next week with our Brazil alumni, as well as our conversation with our alumni in China the week after. You can also find information about some of our upcoming information sessions for some of our global programs as well. So once again, I just want to say thank you to all of our alumni for joining us today, our students who joined us on this morning. I know it's not easy on a Wednesday morning to hop on Zoom. When we're on Zoom, it seems like at all points throughout our day. But a big thank you again to our alumni, to Nikhil and Vinod. And I hope all of you leave this conversation just filled up and have that desire to continue living a global career.